The sweet scent of lemon and sugar still hung in the air at Dulce Sinfonia, but there was no one left to notice it. Anna looked over the empty shop, the tables too clean, the sound of the mixers silent from lack of orders. Every morning, the same routine repeated itself. Open the bakery, pretend that customers would return, and end the day with more debt than hope. That space, once full of life, now echoed like a painful reminder of everything she had lost. The old sign hung crookedly over the entrance, creaking in the cold wind that swept down the town's main street. Anna ran her fingers over the worn marble counter, remembering her parents, who had once dreamed of this business as a family legacy. Now, all that remained was a symbol of failure. The bills piled up next to the cash register formed a mountain too high to climb. Her last employee had quit 3 days ago, and silence was the only loyal customer she had left. Even so, Anna still refused to give up. Deep down, she believed a miracle could happen. Maybe a new contract, a large order, anything. Her pride kept her from asking for help, especially from Carlos, her older brother who always seemed to know what was best for her. The relationship between them was a knot of love and stubbornness, woven from years of misunderstandings and good intentions gone wrong. She spent her nights going over spreadsheets, cutting costs, and planning promotions. Every attempt failed miserably. The problem wasn't the taste, her pastries were flawless, but rather the timing. The town had changed, people had changed, and she had stayed stuck, insisting on a model that no longer fit the present. It was like trying to revive a love that was no longer there. That morning, as the sun touched the foggy glass of the display window, Anna finally admitted what she feared most. Dulce Sinfonia was dying. The main oven had broken, the supplier refused to deliver without payment, and the bank was threatening to foreclose on the property. She looked at the old family recipe book open on the counter and whispered to herself, "Maybe it's time to stop." But deep down, a part of her still couldn't turn off the flame of that dream. Before Anna discovers that even the hardest falls can hide a new beginning, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Here, every story is a fresh chance to remember that even when all seems lost, life can still surprise you. Carlos showed up without warning, with the same confident smile as always and a look that mixed worry and practicality. He scanned the place, sighing at the emptiness of the bakery. "You can't keep going like this, Anna. This is killing you," he said, putting a hand on his sister's shoulder. She gently shrugged him off, trying to hide her irritation. "I didn't ask for help, Carlos. I just need more time."
But time was the one thing she had the least of. While Anna talked about rebuilding the business, Carlos was already thinking of practical solutions. It had always been that way. He solved problems, even when no one asked him to. After a tense conversation, he left, promising to figure something out. Anna thought it was just words to comfort her. She never imagined that in the shadows of that promise, he was crafting a risky plan. Days later, Carlos met with a local businessman who represented a major coffee shop chain. He presented the recipe for the family's famous lemon cake as intellectual property available for licensing. The deal was closed quickly. The cake that symbolized the Martins' legacy now belonged to another brand. Carlos believed the money would be enough to pay off the debts and give his sister a chance to start over. As he signed the contract, he felt a weight in his chest. He knew Anna would never forgive him if she found out, but he also believed it was the only way to save her from herself. With every line he signed, he convinced himself he was doing the right thing, even if the price was the trust of the only person who still truly loved him. That night, Anna went to sleep with no idea what was about to happen. Outside, the Dulce Sinfonia sign swayed, reflecting the streetlights. A colder wind blew, like a silent warning of what to come. The recipe that had sustained generations of sweets and memories was now out of her hands, and soon it would be out of her heart. The next morning, the buzz in town felt different. Anna noticed curious looks as she went out to buy flour, but she ignored them. It was only when she entered the grocery store that she heard two women commenting, "Did you see? The downtown coffee shop is selling the lemon cake from Dolce Sinfonia. It's identical." Her heart froze for a moment. She returned to the bakery with trembling hands, the sound of that conversation echoing in her mind. Determined to understand, she went to the coffee shop. There in the display case was the cake, the same smell, the same texture, the shiny glaze that only she knew how to make. "Sweet limone, house-exclusive recipe," the sign read. Anna felt her legs go weak. She ordered a slice, tasted it, and knew immediately it was hers. Rage surged through her like fire. She went home and frantically went through the paperwork until she found a document she didn't remember signing, with Carlos's signature, perfect but forged. That night, she confronted him. Carlos tried to explain, saying the money had already been used to pay suppliers and stop the bank from foreclosing on the property. "You sold what was mine, Carlos. It was the only thing that was still working," she yelled, tears mixing with the flour dust on her face. "I saved you from a total collapse," he shot back, his tone a mix of desperation and guilt. The silence that followed was sharper than any words. Anna threw her brother out of the bakery, swearing she would never see him again. She tore the recipe book to pieces and locked herself in her room. For the first time, the sound of the oven fell completely silent. Dolce Sinfonia was dead, not just as a business, but in the soul of the person who created it. Outside, Carlos sat crying in his car, trying to believe he had done the right thing, but the bitter aftertaste of guilt would stay with him for a long time.
In the days that followed, the news spread. The townspeople took sides, some calling Ana ungrateful, others condemning Carlos. The bakery, which was once a symbol of togetherness, became the center of a family scandal. And while the town passed judgment, Ana sank into a silence that not even the sound of memories could break. The following weeks were a slow and painful goodbye. Ana tried to keep the bakery open, but the customers had vanished. The curiosity had dried up, and shame had taken the place of pride. She sold 1 or 2 pastries a day, just enough to pay the electric bill and keep breathing among the wreckage. Every batch she baked felt like a useless effort to resurrect what was already dead. One day, looking at the empty counter, she realized the sound of the doorbell no longer brought her joy. She was alone. With a knot in her throat, she wrote a note and stuck it to the front window. Closed until further notice. When she turned off the lights, her reflection merged with the sign in the glass. It was like watching her own farewell. That space, where she had learned to love, had now become the gravesite of a dream. In the days that followed, Ana isolated herself. She avoided friends, ignored phone calls, and Carlos's name had become a poison she couldn't bear to hear. Time dragged on among stacked boxes and recipes stained with tears. Sometimes she would open the torn notebook and try to glue the pages back together, but she'd give up before finishing. Every ripped-out page felt like a piece of herself. The silence in the house was suffocating. Ana started waking up in the middle of the night, the smell of lemon cake still present in her memory. She dreamed of the past, of her parents' laughter, of the cheerful bustle of mornings. Now, all that remained were echoes. The sound that was once sweet now caused pain. Dolce Sinfonia was no more, and perhaps Ana wasn't either. One night, sitting on the cold floor of the empty kitchen, she whispered into the void, "He ruined me. But then a voice, faint and almost inaudible, answered from within her. Or did he set you free? It was the first time that doubt had surfaced, and she didn't know if she wanted to hear the answer. Time passed, but the emptiness remained. Aina woke up early every day, even with no bakery to open. Her body still followed the old rhythm, but her heart no longer had a purpose. Her routine now consisted of cleaning up what was left of Dolce Sinfonia, packing away memories, and avoiding the curious stares from the neighborhood. Every detail, the apron hanging up, the cold oven, the photos of her parents on the wall, reminded her of the failure she was trying to forget. Carlos sent short messages asking to talk, but Aina deleted them without reading. The resentment still burned. She felt her brother had taken more from her than just a business. He had ripped out her life's purpose. And deep down, perhaps what hurt the most was knowing that he sincerely believed he had done the right thing. How do you forgive someone who destroyed everything, thinking they were saving you?
The bills paid with the money from the sale provided temporary relief, but the emotional price was too high. The house fell silent, as if even the objects had lost their shine. Sometimes Anna would walk to the old bakery just to stand still in front of the locked door, staring at the reflection of the unlit sign. It was like visiting the grave of someone she loved. One afternoon, she found a letter from Mrs. Keller in her mailbox. Inside was a simple note. "My dear, don't confuse an ending with a failure. Sometimes it's just a beginning that hasn't revealed itself yet." Anna read it and was reluctant to believe it, but those words settled in her like yeast in dough, silent but ready to rise when the time was right. That night, as the wind blew through the window, she turned on the oven for the first time in weeks. She baked a single cake, without a recipe, without measurements, just by instinct. The sweet smell filled the air, and for a brief moment, Anna felt something different. Maybe it wasn't happiness, but it was hope. A few days later, Anna was surprised by an unexpected visit. Mrs. Keller knocked on her door with the same serene smile as always and a bag of lemons in her hands. "I thought you might need these," she said, walking in without waiting for an invitation. The elderly woman observed the silent surroundings, Anna's downcast gaze, and sighed. "My dear, some things need to be broken so new things can grow." Anna tried to resist the conversation, but her neighbor's wisdom was like sugar dissolving bitterness. Over a cup of tea, Mrs. Keller told stories of when she too had lost everything, and how, years later, she realized it had freed her from a path that no longer made her happy. "Your brother's love is clumsy, Anna, but it's still love. He just didn't know how to show it." The words hit deep. Anna stayed silent, staring at the steam rising from her cup. For the first time, Carlos's name didn't provoke anger, but a softer discomfort, like a wound beginning to heal. It wasn't forgiveness yet, but it wasn't hatred either. It was the first step. When Mrs. Keller left, she offered one last piece of advice. "You are more than that bakery. Your pastries are beautiful, but what's even more beautiful is what they represent. Find a new reason to sweeten the world." Anna stood at the door, watching the old woman walk away as the wind rustled the trees. The phrase echoed like an old melody, a sweet symphony she thought was lost. That night, Anna opened the torn recipe book. She taped some of the pages back together, one by one. At the end, she found a note from her parents. "Our secret isn't in the lemon, but in the love we put into every slice." She cried, and for the first time, the tears seemed to wash something away, not wound her. The mornings began to smell like coffee again, but not like purpose. She cooked by instinct, like someone trying to remember their native language after years of silence. It was on one of these mornings that she received a message from Thomas, her old pastry assistant. "Anna, I'm working at a modern patisserie in Riverdale. They're looking for a creative head baker. I thought of you right away." She read the text several times, unsure if what she felt was fear or gratitude.
Tomas had always admired Anna's talent, even on the bakery's worst days. He believed the world needed to taste her pastries. The offer was tempting, but also frightening. Working somewhere else meant finally abandoning what was left of Dolce Sinfonia. It felt like burying the past without any ceremony. Anna spent the day thinking it over. The idea of starting over was appealing, but doubt held her back. What if she failed again? What if her talent had died along with the bakery? Late that evening, she opened the mended notebook and read her parents' words one more time. Then, for the first time in months, she replied to a message. "I'm willing to talk." The next day, she traveled to Riverdale. The new patisserie's building was modern, full of glass and steel, the opposite of the old brick-and-wood bakery. Inside, the atmosphere smelled of innovation, but Anna's heart beat to the rhythm of nostalgia. Tomas greeted her with a sincere hug. "You're going to like it here," he said. She wanted to believe him. As she watched the busy activity of the place, she realized that maybe the problem had never been the work itself, but rather the fear of change. When the manager appeared and offered her a new apron, she held it in her hands for a moment. The fabric was light, unlike her old one, and she recognized the symbolism. Perhaps it was time to start stitching together a new future. In her first days at the new patisserie, Anna felt out of place. The machines were modern, the recipes came from spreadsheets, and the pace was impersonal. Everything ran like clockwork, but without a soul. She produced perfect, yet cold pastries, beautiful in photos, but lacking the flavor that touches hearts. Something was missing that no technique could provide. Feeling. Even so, Anna pushed herself. Working alongside Tomas brought comfort, but also memories. He admired her skill, but he could see the weight she was carrying. "You're still baking with fear, Anna," he said one day, watching her prepare a glaze. She didn't answer, but the words stayed with her. It was true. She was still cooking while looking over her shoulder. The nights felt long. In the small apartment she had rented, Anna would sit by the window, watching the city lights reflect in her cup of tea. Sometimes she wondered about her brother back home, maybe regretful, maybe relieved. No matter how hard she tried to focus on her new job, the memory of Carlos still throbbed like a poorly healed scar. One day, the owner of the patisserie praised one of the desserts she had created and added it to the menu. It was an immediate success. But when Anna saw the name of the dish, limoni cake, the same as the old recipe, something inside her broke. It wasn't a coincidence. He had taken the idea without crediting her. The past was betraying her all over again. That night, Anna cried alone. She felt trapped in a cycle of painful repetitions, the same betrayal, the same silence. But as she looked at her reflection in the window pane, something shifted. She realized that this time she had a choice. She could run away like before, or she could stand her ground. The fire inside her, which had seemed extinguished, was beginning to rekindle.
The success of the limon cake brought more customers to the patisserie, but every compliment felt like a blow to Anna. The dessert was hers, born from her hands and memories, but the credit belonged to the owner, Mr. Hamilton, who barely understood the meaning behind that flavor. Everyone congratulated her for working with such a visionary man, and she would smile with a tightness in her chest. It was like reliving Carlos's betrayal on a different stage, with new lighting, but the same pain. Each day, the mask felt heavier. Anna spent hours in the kitchen, but the fire that once warmed her creations now burned inside her. Tomas noticed. "You're letting them steal from you again, Anna," he said in a worried whisper. "This time, it's not the rights to a recipe, but the rights to yourself." She looked at him but didn't answer. Deep down, she knew he was right. The nights became unbearable. Anna started dreaming about the past, her parents' voices teaching her the perfect consistency for icing, Carlos's laughter when he tasted the first lemon cake. These dreams came with a mix of longing and guilt. She realized she was still trapped in the memory of her brother, not because of what he had done, but because of what she couldn't forgive. One morning, an envelope with no return address arrived at the patisserie. Inside was a small, yellowed newspaper clipping with an old headline. "Dulce Sinfonia Bakery closes after 27 years." In the corner, a note in familiar handwriting. "The end is just the beginning, little sister. See." Anna held the paper, feeling her heart beat faster. It was the first time Carlos had reached out to her since their fight. Holding the clipping, she realized something simple yet powerful. No matter how hard she tried to run, the past would keep following her until she decided to face it. The anger that had been driving her began to dissolve, making room for something more difficult: forgiveness. 2 days later, Anna received an unexpected phone call. It was Elisa, the old bookkeeper from the bakery. The voice on the other end of the line sounded hesitant but firm. "Anna, I thought you should know. Your brother never kept the money from selling the recipe. He paid off your debts, all of them." The silence that followed was absolute. Anna sat down slowly, trying to process the words. "He did what?" she whispered. Elisa explained everything. Carlos had used every last cent to pay off suppliers, back taxes, and overdue wages, preventing Anna's name from being blacklisted. He said he'd rather be hated than see you ruined. The tears came without warning. The weight Anna had carried for months seemed to suddenly shatter. Carlos hadn't betrayed her out of selfishness. He had loved her in the imperfect and most painful way possible. The revelation left her in shock. She spent the afternoon walking through the city, reliving old memories, her parents' voices teaching her the perfect consistency for icing, Carlos's laughter when he tasted the first lemon cake. These dreams came with a mix of longing and guilt. She realized she was still trapped in the memory of her brother, not because of what he had done, but because of what she couldn't forgive.
That night, Anna couldn't sleep. She sat at the table and wrote a letter. It wasn't an apology, nor an accusation. It was simply an invitation. "Carlos, if you still can, I'd like to talk. The door is open." As she carefully folded the paper, she realized that simple gesture was the first step toward a new beginning. Before going to sleep, she opened the recipe book and baked the old lemon cake. Not the chain's version, not the patisserie's, but her own. The aroma filled the house, and Anna cried, but this time from relief. Forgiveness was beginning to grow inside her, as light as yeast in the oven. 2 days after sending the letter, Anna bought a ticket to her hometown. The train departed at dawn, and she watched the landscape rush by the window as if flipping through a photo album. Every field, every bridge, and every curve seemed to whisper memories of the childhood she'd shared with Carlos. She felt fear and anticipation in equal measure. When the train stopped at the small station, the cold morning air wrapped around her. The town seemed smaller, aged, as if it had shrunk along with the dreams she'd left behind. The streets were quiet but familiar. The old bakery was still there, closed and covered in dust. The Dulce Sinfonia sign faded by time.
Anna approached slowly, running her hand over the foggy glass of the display window. The sun's reflection blended with her own, creating the illusion that past and present coexisted in that moment. When she stepped inside, the sweet smell of memories still lingered, even after months of abandonment. She walked to the counter, touched the cold marble, and felt her heart tighten. On the floor, she found an old baking pan that had been left behind. She held it as if it were a relic. "I didn't lose you, Dad, Mom. I just lost myself," she whispered. And the tears came without resistance. There, among the wreckage of a failed dream, Anna felt a kind of peace she had never known. It was grief, finally transforming into acceptance. As she left, she looked up at the sky and noticed the sun breaking through the clouds, bathing the sign in a soft light. For the first time, she felt no pain looking at the old bakery. She felt gratitude. She knew there was still a conversation waiting to happen, and she was ready to have it. Carlos opened the door with hesitation. When he saw Anna standing before him, time seemed to stop. Neither of them spoke for several long seconds. Her eyes were glistening. His were tired. The silence that once was a chasm now felt like a bridge. "May I come in?" she asked. He simply nodded. The house felt different, but the smell was the same. Fresh coffee and warm bread. They sat at the kitchen table, the very place where so many arguments had started. Carlos tried to speak, but his voice failed him. I thought I was helping." Anna held her cup firmly and replied calmly, "I know. It just took me a while to understand that." The words were few, but heavy with years of weight. He explained everything, the desperation, the decision, the regret. She listened without interrupting, and each confession seemed to lift a weight from both their chests. When he finished, Anna simply placed her hand over his. "You destroyed me, Carlos, but maybe I needed to be destroyed, to be born again."
Carlos cried, unashamed. She did too. The forgiveness didn't come in a grand statement, but in a simple gesture, a tight hug, where time and resentment seemed to finally dissolve. There, in the silence of that kitchen, their lost bond was reborn, not as it was before, but stronger and more genuine. When Anna said goodbye, the sun was beginning to set. Carlos walked her to the door and said, "You were always the heart of this family. I was just trying to keep the beat." She smiled, with tenderness, "And now it's time for me to compose my own melody." As she walked down the street, Anna felt the light breeze on her face, the same breeze that once carried the smell of lemon cake through the town. But now, that scent meant a new beginning. Back in Riverdale, Anna felt different. The streets seemed brighter, and even the sound of traffic seemed to follow a different rhythm, one that now matched her own. The conversation with Carlos had cleansed something inside her, making room for something new. Walking into the patisserie, she realized she no longer belonged there. It was time to build something of her own, something that came from within, not from other people's expectations. She spent weeks planning quietly, sketching ideas, testing recipes, and drawing the name of a new brand in her mended notebook. The name came naturally, Rebirth, a small artisanal dessert atelier made with purpose and soul, like Dolce Sin Familia had once been, but now with the lightness that forgiveness had brought. She rented a small room in the back of a flower shop and started from scratch. The first day was simple: an improvised counter, a new oven, and a handful of curious customers. But the scent of the pastries spread through the street, and soon people started coming back. Every sweet Anna made carried a story, a memory, an emotion, and that, more than any marketing, won people over. Tomas showed up on the second day, surprised and proud. "So this is where the new chapter begins?" he asked, smiling. Anna nodded. "This is where I get to be who I always was,
but better. He offered to help, and together they created a menu that blended tradition and innovation. At its center was the new Rebirth lemon cake, a symbol of everything she had overcome. Orders began to grow, and the atelier quickly gained a reputation. People came not just for the sweets, but for the story. With every customer who tasted her creations, Anna saw in their eyes the same spark she had at the beginning of Dolce Sinfonia. Only now, she knew. It wasn't about the cake, or the bakery, or the name. It was about her.
Tomas, always by her side, had become more than a business partner. He was a loyal friend, almost like a brother. With him, Anna learned to share both the burdens and the joys of the business. Together, they began planning to expand to a second location. But this time, she felt no rush. She had learned that everything has its own time, and that the best recipes are those that grow slowly with care. On a rainy afternoon, Anna received a special order, 100 mini cakes for a local school. When she delivered them, she was greeted by children who clapped after tasting the treats. One of them said, "It feels like there's love inside." Anna smiled. That was exactly it. Everything she made now came from that place, the love that had once seemed lost but had always been inside her. Returning to the atelier, she turned on the oven and watched the flames dance. It was as if the fire was saying, "You're back," and she answered, silently, with a smile. Because yes, she had returned, not to Dolce Sinfonia, but to herself. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the small Rebirth atelier, illuminating the counter full of freshly baked pastries. The scent of lemon and sugar blended with the flowers from the shop next door, creating a unique fragrance, the smell of life starting over. Anna was putting the final glaze on a cake when the door opened and the bell announced a familiar presence. Carlos walked in, thinner, older, but with the same timid smile as always. In his hands he carried a wooden box. Anna froze for a moment, her heart racing. "I didn't think you'd come," she said, trying to hide her emotion. "It took me a while, but I learned that some visits need to wait for the right time," he replied, his voice soft. Without another word, he placed the box on the counter. Inside was the old family recipe book, restored, with the pages glued back together and cleaned. On top was a note in his handwriting. "Now it's all yours. What I took from you, I return multiplied in pride." Anna's tears fell silently as she ran her fingers over the pages. Every stain, every note, every memory. "You never lost me, Carlos," she said, smiling through her tears. "We just needed to find each other again in the right way." He nodded, and together they cut a slice of the new Rebirth cake. Tasting it, Carlos closed his eyes and laughed. "It tastes like home." Anna replied, "It tastes like freedom." As her brother said goodbye, leaving the box on the counter, Anna watched the busy street through the window. Children laughing, couples holding hands, the sound of the living city, everything seemed in harmony. She took the notebook and placed it on a shelf above the oven as a symbol of love and overcoming. That afternoon, the atelier was full. Regular customers, new faces, all sharing that space, which now radiated more than just the aroma of cake. It radiated purpose. Anna served the last slice, wiped down the counter, and looked at the sign on the door, Rebirth, sweets that tell stories. She smiled, because after all, her story had ended, but her life, sweet and free, was just beginning. If this story touched your heart, subscribe now and come savor the taste of freedom in every new tale. Because just like Anna, we all have a rebirth waiting to happen. You just have to believe and hit play.